Hey team, today we're going to be looking at trade barriers, specialization, and factors of trade. I'm going to be posting a Cornell Notes form or template in Google Docs, just like yesterday on Monday, March 30th. You open that template and you will use it to take notes during our presentation today. So have fun, guys. I'm ready to talk about it. It's diving forward and counting down those days until we reach next week and have a small break for spring break. The standards we're going to be looking at are these two. If you ever wonder what we're looking at when you see those numbers, SS7E2, when you see them in the classroom or on our classroom website, they are for and from the Georgia Standards of Excellence. They are posted for 7th grade social studies, and today we're going to explain how voluntary trade benefits buyers and sellers. Specifically, we will talk about specialization and how that encourages trade, and compare and contrast the different types of trade barriers, specifically tariffs, quotas, and embargoes, and talk about why we have to exchange currencies between nations for international trade to happen. So let's look at international trade first. Most of you guys know, because we've talked about it since we were talking about Southwest Asia at the beginning of the year, that international trade is when the different countries among the nation exchange goods or services between our countries. We have exports, which is when, for example, if we're talking about the United States, when we sell things that are made and manufactured here inside of the borders of the US and sell them to other countries. And imports, like when we buy other goods and services that are made or manufactured outside of the United States. A couple of examples talks about our agricultural products going to Canada as an export, or us buying cars like Toyota cars from Japan coming in as an import. There's many things that the United States and other countries export. There's also many things that we and other countries import, because we can't make every single thing that we need. In today's global society, we're very much a consumer driven country, and we buy things, and we just don't make all of those things as cheaply and efficiently as other countries can. And so we trade. Specialization. So we said everybody can't make everything that they need. So countries specialize specifically in what they're able to make and produce best, and to have a superior advantage, if you will. It is a way that limits money that we have to spend on things. And it costs less when you buy specialized items. If you think about all the items in our closets that have China or other countries on your tag, you will know that. You will know oftentimes it is much more efficient to buy a $4 and $5 shirt and pack of socks that has a foreign stamp on it than it is to buy US made things. It increases trade because we can then spend more money. You get more of what you want and have to spend less money to get it. So it's a really cool thing, and it's been going on for many years. Specialization specifically. When you look at medicine, we have pharmaceutical companies that specialize in medications. We have restaurants that specialize in specific types of food. When you go out, you will notice that there's different specialized workers inside of restaurants. You have people that are cooks. You have people in the higher end restaurants that are chefs or sous chefs. And we also have different people that specialize to export items from the United States, including a lot of our automobile manufacturers. It encourages trade, specifically among countries, because again, we just can't make everything that we need. The country selling the product makes a profit and makes money for the item that they specialize in and are therefore exporting. And the country buying the product gets what it needs, oftentimes at a less expensive price than if it were manufactured inside its own borders. Next, we're going to look at free trade versus trade barriers. So, with free trade, nothing gets in the way of people trading with each other. There would not be any trade barriers in place. So countries do sometimes set up trade barriers because they want people to buy their goods. They want to sell their own goods. Oftentimes, that's why you'll see that there's an import tax or something on a good coming from a different country, because the host country is trying to encourage people to buy the products from within. There are cost of benefits related to free trade as well as trade barriers. So, what is a trade barrier? It's anything that hinders, slows down, or stops trade in any way, if you're looking at a Merriam Webster definition. They can be physical, like geographic features, mountains, deserts, rainforests. We all know that when we're talking about Africa, that the Sahara Desert, the world's largest desert, is definitely going to be a trade barrier and has been for many centuries. We know that the world's second largest rainforest lies in the Congo River Basin, and that's also a trade barrier when people are trying to get through there. Other deserts to consider when we're talking specifically about the continent of Africa are, of course, the Kalahari Desert, which we know receives a little bit too much rainfall to be definitively determined as a desert. It's called that. And we know that there's the Sahel region as well, that while not a desert, is certainly a dry area. Trade barriers can also be things that are economic and created by people inside of countries to be beneficial towards a country and their trade relationship, or to punish a country and the trade relationship that you have with that country. There are three major types of economic trade barriers that we talk about in seventh grade when we're talking about trade barriers that are created inside of a country, and that are tariffs, quotas, and embargoes. So, tariffs. Let's look at that Merriam Webster, that definition for it. It is a tax put on goods imported from other countries. The effect of a tariff is to raise the price of the imported product. I'll give you a personal example of this. When I lived in Germany, a big thing over there is to buy things called cuckoo clocks. They're made, a lot of them in the Black Forest over there, and you can buy them less expensively. There's not that import tax, or in their case, an export tax on those clocks. You can buy them inside of the country. And then, because we were stationed on a military base, we were able to go to the local post office. When you're on a military base, that is called an APO, an Army post office, treated a lot of the same way like the USPS. So I was able to get my family's a lot of those little cuckoo clocks and send them back for a fraction of the cost, because I was not having to pay import and export tariffs or taxes that are placed on items that are sold across borders. Okay, so it makes imported goods more expensive, so that consumers are more likely to buy domestic products or products that are produced inside of that nation. If I were to go back and try to buy that same cuckoo clock, and I have purchased one since we've been back stateside, I go on the gentleman's website where I purchased the original one, but now there's a lot of these really crazy things. There's export and import taxes. So the same clock, if you buy like a little electric one that's not one of the fancy wind-up ones, they're usually about, if you buy them inside of the country, they're about 120 euros, maybe depending on the exchange rate, 150 bucks. When I tried to go on and buy it online and have it shipped over, it ended up costing me, with the shipping and with the import and export taxes, like maybe $220. So I paid, a good deal more than I would have paid if I was inside the country. And that's what those taxes do on items, just to give you kind of a small scale personal example. If you look at the graphic about how tariffs work, it shows you country A and country B. It shows you towels made in country A cost $12. Towels made in country B cost $10. So country B towel sells for $12 in country A. It's a 20% tariff. $2 is added to the price to kind of show you on a large scale when you're talking about international trade and not individual things that you purchase. A quota, the definition that you would definitely want to take a look at and know for a quota is it is a restriction on the amount of a good that can be imported into a country. So a tariff is a tax, and a quota is a restriction on the amount. Putting a quota on goods creates a shortage, which can cause the price to rise. Most of us have seen this when we were talking about OSHA or talking about the production of refined oil and when we're talking about gas prices, when you're talking about when a quota is placed or production is halted in some way or a quota is put on production, it will cause the price oftentimes to go up a little bit. Quotas encourage people to buy domestic products as well rather than foreign goods because it does lead to an increase in price. Embargoes. An embargo is when a country or a group of countries completely refuse to trade with another nation. So, probably the most famous embargo to Americans is the embargo that was enacted on Cuba since 1960. It has morphed and changed over the years, with some restrictions being heavier in some years than others. Currently, as we stand, there's a lot of restrictions in place, but you still can legally travel to Cuba as an American. But all of that happened to put in place trade barriers between the United States and Cuba back during the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. A trade embargo is something that forbids trade with another country. An embargo is the harshest type of trade barrier and is usually enacted for political purposes to hurt a country economically. If you go and take a little bit of a dive into history, and even if you Google, guys, the Cuban Missile Crisis and the American embargo, it will give you some good timelined information on many of the websites that you will find to give you a history of what happened with the American embargo. Benefits of trade barriers. Trade barriers provide many benefits. They protect homeland industries from competition. So if you have a particular country that's able to produce low-priced, let's just say carved wooden blinds, okay? And you want them to be purchased by the manufacturers inside of your own country. One of the things you can do is put a tariff on it or a quota on the amount that can be shipped into your country, therefore causing the price to be higher for the item that's being shipped in. And then it makes your blinds in your own country look more attractive to buyers because the price would then be lower. So it protects homeland industries. It protects jobs. A lot of people my age, I think I'm still considered a millennial because I was born in '83, somewhere between Generation X and millennial, is a lot of people lost their jobs many years ago when people were able to manufacture items in different countries across North and Central America, and factories and things that produce those items inside of the United States closed down. So my mother was an example of that. She used to work when I was younger at a place called, I believe it's Cooper Industries, but it was called Nicholson File. They created steel files, and their companies closed down and replanted themselves in Mexico. And they were able to produce items more cheaply there due to being able to pay the workforce less. And so they chose to do that. So one of the reasons why you may choose to put in trade barriers is to protect the jobs of the people inside of the country that you're in. When we're talking about us, of course, we're talking about the United States. And to prevent country and jobs, corporations being able to go somewhere else, produce items more cheaply, then ship them back into the United States, causing the price of those items to drop. You could put trade barriers in place to protect the jobs of people and to stop that from happening. Also, trade barriers help provide extra income for the government. When you have import taxes, tariffs placed on items, it raises money for the government. For example, when I had to pay those import taxes for the cuckoo clock I was buying, it goes to the government, which is always a good thing to help support the country that you're in. They increase the number of goods people can choose from as well. So, what are the costs of trade barriers? Well, it increases, of course, the price of imported goods. The price, though it makes money for the country with the import export taxes, it does cause the price of goods to go up. A tax on imported goods is passed along to the consumer. You and I are the ones that pay for that. So it goes up. There is less competition from world markets, which means that there is an increase in the price of goods. And with quotas, like where there's a restriction on the amount that can come in, there is a smaller variety of goods available for consumers to choose from when there is a restriction on the amount of something that can come in. Guys, I'm going to click out of here. I hope you enjoyed it. I've enjoyed chatting with you, going over through trade barriers, specialization, and factors of trade. Try to keep this brief, but if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a question, or I can even schedule a Google Meet for us, and we can sit and chat about it and answer any questions you may have. I hope you have a great day. Know that we are all missing you, and see you soon. Whoop. Let me see if I can find off